Her scent drove the guards mad. The Alpha King marked her on the spot to claim what was his. The wind howled through the jagged peaks surrounding the kingdom of Dravenhold, carrying with it the scent of iron and pine. Shadows clung to the cliffs like living things, and the sky was a muted gray, streaked with the silver fingers of a reluctant sun. In the distance, the fortress of the Alpha King rose like a jagged crown, its walls carved from black stone, its towers piercing the low-hanging clouds. Elara tightened the straps of her traveling cloak, feeling the weight of the satchel slung across her shoulder. Inside were the healing herbs she had gathered from the mountains, tinctures to ease fevered bodies, and dried petals that whispered faintly of magic she had yet to understand. She had heard the rumors. The Alpha King, Kalen, was a ruler feared across the lands, a man whose very presence commanded loyalty and terror alike. But the villages begged her to come. Plague had taken hold, and only the fortress's stores and Kalen's resources could save them. As she approached the massive gates, the guards eyed her with thinly veiled suspicion. Their hands hovered near their spears, their eyes flicking nervously to the shadows beyond. And then it happened. The moment she stepped inside the courtyard, the air shifted. Her scent, an invisible, fragile thing, seemed to coil around the stone walls, winding like smoke, touching the noses of the guards. They shivered. Their hands tightened on their weapons, not in threat, but in something akin to panic. One of them muttered under his breath, eyes wide and staggered. Another reached for the hilt of his sword, then froze, caught in a strange trance. Elara stopped, heart thumping, unsure what had happened. From the great hall above, a shadow descended. Kalen. His presence was immediate, a magnetic force that drew every gaze, every heartbeat. The guards instinctively stepped back, their fear unmistakable. But for Elara, it was different. Her chest tightened, and yet a strange warmth spread through her, a pull she could not name. He was tall, broader than any man she had ever seen. His eyes were storm gray, piercing yet unreadable, as if he could see the deepest corners of her soul in a single glance. A mantle of black fur fell across his shoulders, and his armor gleamed in the dim light of the torches lining the courtyard. "Who are you?" Kalen's voice was low, measured, carrying authority that made the wind itself seem still. "I am Elara," she said, steadying her trembling hands. "I bring aid to your people. Plague has taken the villages beyond the forest." "I can help." Kalen's gaze swept over her, lingering too long, and she felt as though he were peeling back her thoughts, one layer at a time. Then his eyes narrowed, a shadow crossing his face. He took a step closer, and the very stones beneath her feet seemed to hum. "You smell different," he said, voice dropping to a whisper, yet every word struck her with the force of thunder. "The guards. They cannot control themselves around you. How is this possible?" She did not understand. She had always known she was different. Her magic was subtle, hidden beneath the careful guise of a healer, but she had never caused such a reaction. Her heart beat faster, both from fear and something else, a fluttering she could not name. Not threatening, but commanding. "Come with me," he said. The pull in his voice was irresistible. Against every instinct to run, Elara followed, stepping past the trembling guards and into the shadows of the fortress. The halls of Dravenhold were cavernous, lit by torches whose flames seemed to flicker unnaturally in his presence. Murals of past kings and queens adorned the walls, each figure painted with eyes that seemed to follow her as she walked. The air smelled of iron, wood, and something older, magic, lingering like a shadow at the edges of the mind. A high ceiling loomed overhead, carved with intricate runes that glimmered faintly in the torchlight. Kaelin gestured for her to sit on a stone bench in the center of the room. "You do not understand what you carry within you," he said. "And yet, I feel it. A bond. A power that has awakened something long thought dormant." Ilara's throat went dry. I am only a healer. I do not. Power does not always announce itself. It waits, and it finds those it chooses. Before she could reply, Kaelin reached for a small leather pouch at his belt. From it he drew a silver sigil, etched with runes that shimmered with an otherworldly light. He knelt before her, not touching her yet, and whispered words that sounded like wind through trees. Ilara felt her body stiffen. She had heard of marking rituals, binding sigils that could link two fates. They were dangerous, forbidden in many lands. But Kaelin's eyes held a gravity she could not deny. The sigil hovered above her skin, warm but not painful. A thread of light extended from it, wrapping gently around her wrist. She felt a surge of energy, a tether pulling at her very essence. Fear and wonder collided inside her. "You are marked," Kaelin said softly. "Not by force, but by fate. The bond is yours and mine. It will protect you, and it will test you." Hilara's pulse raced. "Why, me?" Kaelin did not answer immediately. His eyes lingered on her, gray storms in human form. "Because the scent you carry, it awakens the wolf. The alpha within me stirs because of you. And the prophecy, it names the one who will walk beside me." Her hands trembled. A part of her wanted to flee, to run back to the mountains where no shadows could touch her. But another part, a part she did not fully understand, felt drawn to him, compelled by something older than fear, older than logic. "You must understand," Kaelin continued, rising and circling her slowly. "This is not a bond of servitude, but of destiny. You are bound to me, and in that binding, your power will awaken fully. But there will be trials. Darkness will come. And only together, perhaps only together, can we survive it." Elara looked up at him, her chest tight with conflicting emotions. Fear, awe, and something deeper, an undeniable longing, pulsed through her veins. She wanted to speak, to refuse, but the words stuck in her throat, the weight of the fortress, the gravity of his presence, and the invisible pull of the sigil held her in place. Then, without warning, a tremor shook the chamber. The runes along the ceiling flared brightly, and a low hum filled the air. Ilara's vision blurred. Her own magic, dormant until now, surged within her. It flowed through her fingertips, across her arms, sparking against the stone walls. Kaelin's eyes widened. "It is stronger than I anticipated," he murmured. "You cannot contain it yet. You must learn, or it will learn you." The energy coiled around Alara, and the chamber shook again. Torches flared, their light bending unnaturally. The sigil burned faintly on her wrist, its glow mingling with the wild magic that now raged inside her. She fell to her knees, terrified of what she might unleash. Kalen stepped forward, placing a hand near her shoulder. Not pressing, just hovering. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice calm yet firm. "Focus. You are not alone in this. I am here, and we are bound. That bond will guide you." Elara gasped, trying to steady herself, but the magic inside her was too wild, too raw. It surged outward in a wave that rattled the chamber, and for a moment, the fortress itself seemed alive, reacting to her presence. Finally, with a shuddering breath, the energy receded. The sigil glowed faintly, its binding secure. The chamber was silent again, save for the echoes of their breaths. Kalen stepped closer, his gray eyes softening for the first time. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "You have awakened something long buried, Alara, and the kingdom and I will never be the same." Her heart pounded, a mixture of fear and awe. She wanted to speak, to question, to demand answers, but she was spent, drained by the magic, by the weight of his presence, by the unspoken connection that now tied them together. Outside, the wind continued to howl, carrying with it whispers of ancient curses, long-forgotten prophecies, and the scent of fate. Somewhere deep in the fortress, a guard muttered again, this time trembling, as if caught in a dream too vivid to escape. Elara looked at Kalen, the Alpha King who had marked her, whose power stirred at her very presence, and knew that nothing in her life would ever be the same. The bond was real, the magic was real, and the danger was only beginning. And then, from deep within the fortress, a faint, eerie whisper called her name. It was not Kalen. It was older, darker, and it promised that the trials to come would test every heartbeat, every breath, and every choice she would ever make. Elara shivered, and for the first time truly understood the weight of destiny. The morning sun struggled to pierce the thick fog that clung to the walls of Dravenhold Fortress. Torches still burned in the great hall, flickering against the carved stone, and the echoes of last night's strange events lingered in the air like a heavy perfume. Elara sat in her small chamber, staring at the faint glow of the sigil on her wrist. It pulsed softly, like a heartbeat that was not entirely her own. Though the magic had calmed after the previous night's surge, its presence reminded her that she was no longer just a healer passing through a kingdom. She was marked, tied to a man whose power was as immense as it was unpredictable. Her fingers traced the delicate lines of the sigil, and a faint warmth spread through her skin. She tried to understand it, tried to focus, but the feeling was as intangible as the wind and twice as insistent. A soft knock at the door made her start. "Enter," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. Kalen stepped inside, his black cloak brushing the floor. His eyes, gray as storm clouds, were fixed on her, but there was no threat in his gaze, only an intensity that made her stomach tighten. "You rested," he said simply. His voice, low and controlled, carried an authority that made even the guards hesitate to speak in his presence. "I did what I could," she replied. "But there is so much I do not understand. This bond," The magic. Why me? Kalen leaned against the edge of the wooden table, folding his arms. Because the prophecy named you. Because your bloodline carries a power that has slept for centuries, and because your scent. It awakened the alpha within me. Elara frowned, her fingers tightening around the hem of her cloak. The guards, they acted strangely. They could barely control themselves. He nodded, his expression shadowed. It is not just them. The bond affects everything around you. Your presence alters the air, the stones, the very energy of this fortress. Some will be drawn to you. Some will fear you. All will notice when you walk by. Her stomach churned. And the marking? What does it truly mean? Kalen's eyes softened, though the edges of his expression remained sharp, like a blade. It links our fates. It protects you, yes, but it also binds you to the dangers of this kingdom. You cannot leave without awakening forces that have waited long for a chance to strike, and it will test both of us. You to control your power. Me to control myself. Elara swallowed, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She wanted to argue, to deny the truth of what he said, but deep inside she felt it, the invisible threads that pulled her toward him and toward something far greater than herself. The sound of a horn echoed through the fortress. Kalen's eyes darkened, and he moved to the window. The courtyard below was alive with activity. Soldiers and guards whispered in tense clusters, casting anxious glances toward the hallways where shadows seemed to linger unnaturally. Elara, he said, turning to her, the bond is attracting attention. Already there are those who would seek to use you, or your power for their own ends. Before she could reply, a servant entered, bowing quickly. My lord, there are men at the gate. They claim to bring word from the northern villages. They seem frightened, and yet... He hesitated, his eyes flicking to Elara. And yet, they cannot look away from her. Kalen's gaze snapped to her, a flash of recognition in his eyes. It begins, he said. Then, almost to himself, the wolf stirs, and others will sense it. We must be cautious. The men at the gate were led into the hall. They spoke quickly, voices trembling. Villages beyond the northern forest were burning with disease and despair. Children were ill, mothers wept, and fields lay fallow with rot. They begged for aid, but their eyes constantly flicked toward Elara, drawn by a force they could not name. Kalen's jaw tightened. We will provide help, he said. But you must remain here. The bond makes you vulnerable, and there are those who would seek to harm you, to challenge me. You mean people here? In your own castle? He nodded. Power is never neutral. Those who see strength or sense it often seek to possess or destroy it. You must learn to control your gift. And quickly. For the rest of the day, Kylin guided her through the fortress, introducing her to the inner workings of the castle and its defenses. Elara noticed the subtle ways he commanded respect, not through fear alone, but through the weight of his presence. Soldiers and servants alike deferred to him, and yet their eyes betrayed curiosity, longing, or suspicion when they glanced at her. By evening, Kalen brought her to the training yard. The setting sun painted the stone walls in shades of amber and blood red. He gestured toward the practice dummies. "We begin with control," he said. "Your magic is wild, but not without form. I will teach you how to focus it." Ilara stepped forward, hands trembling. She tried to draw on the energy within her, but the moment she did, the air around her shimmered and sparks of light danced across the stone. A faint, warm wind stirred, carrying her scent, and with it the soldiers nearby faltered, stepping back as if in awe or confusion. Kalen's eyes flicked toward her, sharp with warning. "Concentrate, not on the energy, but on your intention. You command it, not the other way around." Her focus wavered, her thoughts tangled. She imagined healing, protection, control, anything but fear. Slowly the sparks settled, the shimmer faded, and the air calmed. She exhaled, feeling a measure of pride. Kalen approached, his expression unreadable. "You are stronger than most could hope," he said, "but strength without control is dangerous. For you, and for everyone around you." Elara's cheeks flushed. "I will learn. I must." He studied her for a long moment, and she felt the weight of his gaze, heavy, yet strangely protective. "There are those who will test us," he said quietly. "Some will come openly, others silently. The bond you carry makes you a target, and yet it also makes you indispensable." That night, Elara could not sleep. The chamber was quiet, but her mind raced. She thought of Kalen, of the way he looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, of the warmth and command that radiated from him. She thought of the magic inside her, wild and unrestrained, and the power of the sigil that tied them together. A soft knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find Kalen, standing in the torchlight. "I could not rest, either," he said, his voice low. "The bond. It calls to me in ways I did not anticipate. You are unlike anyone I have ever known." Elara swallowed, unsure how to respond. "And I am afraid," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Afraid of this power, afraid of you, afraid of what is to come." Kalen stepped closer, and she felt the pull of him in every fiber of her being. "Fear is not weakness," he said. "It is recognition of what is real. You are strong, Elara, stronger than you know, and I will not let anyone or anything harm you while I draw breath." She looked up at him, and for a moment, the fortress, the fog, and the weight of destiny fell away. All that remained was the pull between them, magnetic, undeniable, and dangerous. Before either could speak further, a commotion arose in the courtyard below. Soldiers shouted, and the clanging of steel rang through the hallways. Hilara's heart leapt. Kalen's eyes narrowed, storm-gray and sharp. "They have come," he said grimly. "Someone has noticed the bond, and seeks to use it against us." Without another word, he moved to the door, hand brushing hers for the briefest instant. The contact sent a spark through her that had nothing to do with magic, a pulse of shared tension and anticipation. They descended to the courtyard, where a group of strangers waited, cloaked and hooded. Their eyes were not ordinary. They glowed faintly, as if reflecting something ancient and malevolent. The soldiers around them stepped back, unsure as the strangers moved forward with confidence. One of them spoke, voice smooth and cold. "We have come for the one who is bound. She carries a power that belongs to us. Hand her over, and your fortress may remain intact. Refuse, and all here will burn." "You overestimate yourselves," he said, his voice low and lethal. "She belongs to me." To the kingdom. To the bond that links us. Step closer, and you will learn the meaning of the Alpha's wrath. Elara felt her magic stir in response to their presence, the sigil on her wrist flaring faintly. Her pulse raced, fear and determination entwined. The strangers paused, sensing the bond between her and Kaelin, a connection neither fully understood but could not ignore. One of them hissed, backing away slightly, while another drew a hidden blade, the metal glinting with a dark aura. Kaelin moved to stand in front of her, protective, commanding. "They will learn," he murmured, "that power and destiny are not to be trifled with." Elara looked up at him, her chest tight with fear, and something else, awe, longing, and a strange exhilaration. The bond pulsed between them, a tether in the storm, and she realized that her life had changed irrevocably. She was no longer a visitor in the kingdom. She was part of it, part of him, and the trials had only begun. The northern wind cut through the forests beyond Dravenhold like shards of glass, carrying frost and whispers of things that had been sleeping too long. Elara's boots sank into the frozen undergrowth, her cloak pulled tight around her. She had escaped the fortress only briefly, led by whispers and instincts she did not yet understand. But the bond with Kaelin hummed along her veins, urging her back even as danger pressed from every shadow. Kaelin's words echoed in her mind. "The bond will protect you, and it will test us both." She had never felt the full weight of those words until this moment. The world around her was not just hostile. It seemed alive, watching, judging, waiting for her misstep. In the distance, the ruins of an old tower rose from the snow-dusted forest floor, blackened stone stained with centuries of rain and moss. Legends said it had once been the home of a sorcerer who had tried to rival the Alpha Kings themselves. Elara shivered. Something powerful lingered here, and her instincts screamed that it was drawn to her as much as she was to Kaelin. She stepped carefully, and the ground beneath her seemed to pulse in rhythm with the sigil on her wrist. It was as though the marking itself was aware of the danger approaching, warning her to proceed cautiously. She had grown more familiar with its warmth over the past days, but now it throbbed like a heartbeat, fast and anxious, as if anticipating confrontation. Suddenly a shadow darted from between the trees. A figure, cloaked and swift, moved with unnatural grace. Elara froze, raising her hands instinctively, the energy inside her stirring. The figure stopped several paces away and lifted a hand. "Elara," a voice whispered, smooth, cold, unfamiliar. "Do you not see? Your power is wasted in that fortress." You could be so much more. Show yourself. The figure stepped into a beam of pale sunlight, revealing a face masked with silver and eyes that glowed faintly with an otherworldly light. I am someone who understands what Kalen cannot, the stranger said. The bond that ties you to him is powerful, yes, but it also binds you. Bah, you are not free. With me, you can wield your gift fully. Alara felt the pull immediately. The words were honeyed, tempting. But beneath them, a sense of danger coiled in the air, dark and suffocating. Her magic flared in response, but she forced herself to breathe, to focus. I belong to no one but myself, she said, voice trembling but firm. The figure tilted their head, amused. And yet he marked you. Do you not feel it? The pull? It is irresistible. Even now, the bond thrums through you. She did feel it. The tug toward Kalen, the deep, almost instinctive connection that had been growing stronger with each passing day. Fear mingled with longing, and for a fleeting moment, doubt gnawed at her resolve. But then she remembered Kalen's protective gaze, the trust implicit in his words, and the way he had taught her to control her power rather than fear it. I will not follow you, she said, her hands glowing faintly with controlled energy. I am not yours to command. The stranger's amusement faded, replaced by sharp calculation. With a movement like smoke, they lunged, attempting to strike her with a dagger that glimmered with shadowy magic. Alara barely reacted in time, drawing her own energy outward. A protective barrier of shimmering light formed around her, deflecting the attack and sending a jolt of energy through the snow-covered ground. The figure hissed, retreating slightly. So strong, but not yet fully awakened. You will be mine in time, they said, before disappearing into the forest, leaving only the echo of their footsteps and a chill that seemed to pierce the bones. Elara exhaled, trembling, and sank to her knees. Her hands still glowed faintly, her chest tight with the effort. She had defended herself, yes, but the encounter had shaken her deeply. The bond with Kalen pulsed stronger than ever, as though aware of the danger, warning her that the trials were just beginning. From the distance came the sound of wings. Or perhaps it was the wind playing tricks on her. Either way, she sensed Kalen before she saw him, moving through the trees with his familiar, commanding presence. His gray eyes scanned the area, narrowing when they found her. Relief and tension wove across his face as he approached. Elara, he said, voice steady but laced with concern. Are you unharmed? She looked up at him, the snow catching in her hair, frost clinging to her cloak. I'm fine. But someone attacked me. They tried to take me, to use my power. Kalen's jaw tightened. I felt it. The bond, it screamed when they drew near. You are stronger than I expected, but your power is not yet fully yours. You must learn control. And I must learn restraint. Elara frowned. Restraint? You? He stepped closer, and she felt the same pull she had felt from the moment they had met. Yes, he admitted quietly. The alpha within me is not just strength. It is hunger, instinct, dominance. You awaken it in ways I cannot fully manage. I want to protect you, and yet the desire to claim what is mine battles against that? Her heart raced. She understood, perhaps better than she wanted to, the depth of his struggle. The bond did not just connect them physically or magically, it connected their emotions, their instincts, their very souls. Every glance, every movement carried weight. Kalen knelt beside her, his presence both commanding and reassuring. You are not alone, he whispered. Even if the world wishes to claim you, even if shadows gather to test us, I will not let harm come to you. We will face it together, Alara nodded, her pulse still racing, a mixture of fear and relief mingling in her chest. She felt the magic in her veins settle slightly, responding to the calm strength he exuded. Yet, deep inside, she knew the trials were far from over. Over the next days, Kalen guided her through the forests and mountains beyond the fortress, teaching her to channel her power, to sense the subtle currents of magic in the world, and to protect herself against forces that lurked unseen. She discovered abilities she had never imagined, the ability to mend wounds with a touch, to calm the frenzied energy of animals, and even to sense the intentions of those who approached. But with each lesson came temptation. Shadows whispered promises in the wind, testing her resolve. The stranger from the forest had not been the last. Whispers reached her mind, urging her to embrace the full potential of her power, to sever the bond that tied her to Kalen. Fear and longing collided, creating a storm within her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the snow in hues of rose and gold, Kalen and Elara set camp beside a frozen river. The air was cold, the sky streaked with violet, and the forest around them seemed to hold its breath. Elara, Kalen said softly, you must understand. The bond does more than link our power. It links our hearts. You feel what I feel, even when you do not want to. And I feel more than I can contain. Her breath caught. Kalen, I feel it too. The bond, it calls me to you. But I am afraid of losing myself, and afraid of what your alpha nature might demand. He reached for her hand, the sigil glowing faintly in response. It demands nothing but honesty, he said. The rest is a choice. We can face the trials together, or we can let them break us apart. I will not let us be broken. The wind shifted, and with it came a low, eerie sound. Not of the forest, not of the river, but something older. Something that belonged to a time before kings, before bonds, before the fortress itself. Elara's eyes widened. What is that? Kalen's expression darkened. It is the consequence of the bond, he said. It knows you are marked, and it is coming. Suddenly, shadows coalesced in the trees across the river. Figures moved with unnatural grace, silent but purposeful. The stranger, or perhaps others of their kind, had returned, and they were not alone. The energy that pulsed from them was older, darker, and it pressed against Alara's magic like ice against fire. Kalen stood instantly, placing himself between her and the encroaching figures. Stay close, he commanded. Do not panic. Let the bond guide you. Ilara nodded, her pulse racing, her heart hammering in rhythm with the sigil's glow. She drew in a shaky breath, feeling the surge of her own magic, the connection to Kalen, and the tether of fate that bound them both. Together, they could face this threat. Alone, she did not want to imagine it. The shadowed figures stepped forward, their eyes gleaming with dark intent. One of them spoke, voice like ice. The bond belongs to us. She belongs to us. You cannot stop what has waited centuries to awaken. Kylan's gray eyes narrowed. The bond belongs to no one but her and me. Step closer, and you will see why it is not yours to claim. The river rippled unnaturally. The air thickened with energy, and Ilara felt the bond surge, a pulse of power that threatened to overwhelm her completely. For the first time, she truly understood the weight of her destiny. The trials ahead were not just about survival. They were about choice, control, and the strength of heart and mind. And if she faltered, Kalen would fall with her. The forest beyond Dravenhold shivered in a cold dawn. Mist clung to the ground like a pale cloak, curling around the roots of ancient trees, and the frozen river reflected the gray sky with the sheen of shattered glass. Ilara stood at its edge, the sigil on her wrist glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Beside her, Kalen's presence radiated power and calm, the Alpha King whose every movement seemed to command the world itself. The shadowed figures from the forest had returned, more numerous and deliberate than before. Their eyes glimmered with an unnatural light, their whispers a low hum that scraped at the edges of the mind. They sought the bond, the power that tied Ilara and Kalen together, a force older than the kingdom, older than the mountains themselves. Kalen placed a hand gently on Ilara's shoulder. "You are ready," he said, his voice steady but layered with concern. "We face this together." The bond is not just between us. It is our strength. Trust it, and trust me. Ilara nodded, drawing a deep breath. She could feel her magic responding to the bond, a tide of warmth and light that spread through her arms and fingers. The power was hers, yes, but tethered to Kalen's alpha essence. Together, they were more than themselves, a force neither could wield alone. The shadowed figures advanced, gliding over the frost-covered ground. Ilara stepped forward first, hands glowing as she channeled her energy. A shield of shimmering light extended before her, pulsing in response to her heartbeat. The sigil burned brighter, binding her power to Kalen's presence beside her. Kalen drew his sword, its steel catching the gray light. "They underestimate us," he murmured. His voice was calm, but there was a hardness in it that warned even the shadows of their misstep. They do not know what it means to challenge the Alpha and the bond he protects. The first of the shadowed figures lunged, moving faster than thought. Ilara raised her hands, sending a wave of magic outward. The force struck the attacker, knocking it back but not destroying it. The shadows were resilient, their forms shifting and reforming with a will that was ancient and relentless. Kalen stepped forward, sword slicing through the frozen air with precision. Every movement was measured, controlled, yet powerful enough to shatter stone. His presence steadied Ilara, and her magic responded, creating bursts of light and energy that pulsed with each swing of his blade. Together they moved as one, a storm of steel and magic, shadow and light. Yet the shadows adapted, surrounding them in a circle that seemed unbreakable. Ilara felt panic rise, a thread of fear weaving through the bond. The sigil pulsed violently, warning her, urging her to control the surge before it overwhelmed her. Kaylin's eyes met hers, gray and unwavering. "Focus on me," he said. "The bond is stronger than their darkness. Trust it. Trust us." Elara inhaled, centering herself. She felt Kalen's presence, his calm strength, his alpha essence guiding her power. Slowly the light around her expanded, forming a dome that pushed back the encroaching shadows. The creatures hissed, recoiling, their forms flickering like dying stars. But then the ground trembled beneath them. A figure unlike the rest stepped forward from the shadows, taller and darker, its eyes glowing like molten silver. It radiated a power that pressed against the bond, trying to sever it, to claim Ilara's magic as its own. Kalen's jaw tightened. "It is the one who has been guiding them," he said, voice low. "The ancient entity bound to the curse of my lineage. It seeks to end the bond, and through it, me." Elara's pulse quickened. "Can we stop it?" Kalen took her hand, and the sigil glowed brighter, connecting their magic into a single stream. "We must. Together we are stronger than it knows." The figure advanced, and Elara unleashed everything she had learned, every spark of her magic flowing outward. Light and energy collided with darkness, creating a storm that shook the frozen river and rattled the trees. Kalen moved beside her, striking with his sword, each swing synchronized with her bursts of power. The shadowed entity roared, a sound that seemed to pierce the soul. It lashed out with tendrils of black energy striking toward Kalen. Elara reacted instantly, her hands flaring with light to shield him. The force slammed against her, knocking her back, but the bond held. She felt Kalen's strength reinforcing hers, and together they withstood the blow. "You are stronger than I imagined," the entity hissed. "But the bond, it will break." Kalen stepped forward, eyes blazing. "No, it will not break. It is forged in trust, in loyalty, in choice. You cannot sever what is willing to endure." Elara felt the surge of power again, the bond responding to Kalen's alpha essence. Fear and determination intertwined within her, and for the first time she embraced the truth. The bond was not just a tether. It was love, trust, and shared purpose. Together, they were unstoppable. With a focused breath, she channeled the full force of her magic through the sigil. Light exploded outward, blinding and pure, wrapping around the ancient entity. Kalen struck at the same moment, his sword slicing through the darkness with precision and strength. The entity shrieked, its form unraveling like smoke in the wind. The shadows dissipated, the forest fell silent, and the frozen river reflected the morning sun for the first time in days. Elara collapsed to her knees, exhausted, but Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The sigil dimmed to a soft glow, a reminder of the bond that had endured, but the weight of the battle lingered in her chest. "You did it," Kalen said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "We did it." Elara looked up at him, seeing not just the Alpha King who had marked her, but the man who had fought beside her, trusted her, and accepted her strength. "We survived," she said, voice trembling, "because of the bond, and because of us." Kalen's gray eyes softened, the storm within them settling into calm. The bond has survived more than I expected, and so have we. But remember, the world will always test us. This is only the beginning of what we must protect. They rose together, the snow crunching beneath their boots. The forest around them seemed alive, yet peaceful, as though the magic of their bond had restored a measure of balance. Birds cautiously returned to the trees, and the frozen river gleamed like glass, reflecting the pale sun. When they returned to the fortress, the kingdom itself seemed to breathe with relief. Soldiers and villagers alike felt the change, sensing the power of the bond that had endured and prevailed. Kaelin and Alara were greeted not just as rulers, but as protectors, two hearts linked, tempered by trials, and strengthened by love and trust. In the quiet moments that followed, Kaelin led Alara to the highest tower of the fortress. From there, they could see the kingdom sprawled beneath them, the mountains rising in shadowed majesty, the forests thick and alive, and the rivers glinting in the sunlight. Alara touched the sigil on her wrist, now a gentle glow rather than a pulsing warning. "It feels different," she said. Kaelin looked at her, his eyes storm gray and steady. "It has changed," he said. "Not the bond itself, but us. We are stronger. We are united. And whatever darkness comes next, we will face it together." For the first time, Alara allowed herself to rest completely against him, feeling the weight of the battles behind them and the quiet promise of the days ahead. The bond was no longer a test, a warning, or a chain. It was a connection that had survived fire, shadow, and fear. And in that moment, they both knew that the Alpha King and the healer bound by fate had not just survived. They had become something greater than themselves, a force that would endure, luminous and unbroken, in the world of kings, curses, and magic. Yet beyond the mountains, in the shadowed forests, a faint howl carried on the wind. The lineage of the Alpha Kings was far from complete. The bond had won today, but destiny would always call them to vigilance. The world would test them again, as it always did. Kaelin took Alara's hand, fingers intertwining. "No matter what comes," he said softly, "we will face it as one. The bond and our hearts are unbreakable." Alara smiled, a mixture of relief, pride, and longing. "Together," she said. And together they looked toward the horizon, toward the kingdom they had saved, toward the unknown that awaited them. Hearts bound, powers united, and a love forged in fire and shadow that would endure beyond time. The wind whispered through the mountains, carrying the promise of light born from ash, and for the first time in a long time, the world felt still.